Hello everyone, and welcome back to another monthly reading wrap-up. I feel like I filmed one of these videos like 3 days ago, but apparently it's been an entire month. I don't know how March is over. Time is going by faster than ever. It's actually kind of scary. But I had a great reading month this month because this was my first month of not having school. So it was one of like the main things I focused on was just reading, and I loved every second of it, and I read so many books. This is the most I've read, I think, since COVID quarantine, like in 2020, and I have such good books to talk about. I don't think I'm gonna go in order of like how I usually do of what I read in the month, just because I have so many that I want to talk about first. So this isn't going to be in order, but it doesn't matter. It's everything I read this month. First books I want to talk about is a series of interconnected standalones, and if you have the same book taste as me, you'll love these. These are small town romances. Each book is about kind of a different sibling slash friend in this like found family friend group, and it was so good. I'm just going to talk about each one honestly because you could read them separately if you want to, but I really recommend reading all of them. And all of these books take place on like the same ranch in this small town that this family kind of owns. It's about two brothers and then their best friend, who's like basically an honorary brother, and then all of their love interests. So first one, Flawless. This was about Rhett, who's the youngest brother. Basically, Rhett is a famous professional bull rider, and he recently had like a scandal in the media where his reputation is kind of going downhill. And then Summer, her dad, is his publicist, agent, PR guy, and then assigns Summer to look after Rhett, basically babysit him to make sure he doesn't do anything more to like ruin his image. And then Summer has to move into his house for a couple of months. Rhett's not happy about this. He's like, I don't need a babysitter, leave me alone. But he has a close relationship with Summer's dad, and Summer's dad is like, the one rule is don't touch my daughter, right? So you already know. It's the forbidden fruit. He's gonna want to do it. But they slowly develop a relationship throughout this book, and I just thought it was really good build up, really good chemistry between the characters. There's a lot of jealousy. I don't know, I feel like this was like a cute fluffy romance, but it also had like more of a plot to it with like the characters' stories, which is what made me like kind of really enjoy it. I just thought the progression of the relationship was so good. I had butterflies the whole time, and they hinted at like a second couple in this book, and I already knew that that second couple was probably gonna be my favorite, and I was right. So then is Heartless, which is about the oldest brother, Cade, who is a single dad, so grumpy. Literally no one has like ever seen this man smile. Everyone jokes around how serious he is until he hires Summer's best friend to babysit his son, or kind of be like a live-in nanny, because he like owns the farm and has to go work in the fields every single day. So Willa moves into their home, is taking care of his son, and everyone starts noticing that Cade is like becoming a softie. Not really, but like kind of. Like he'll only smile around her, like he suddenly is like a new person. But there's like a 12-year age gap between them. I think she's like 26 and he's like 38 or something, so he's trying to avoid her, but she's always around. He sees her building a relationship with his son, and that's kind of what makes him start falling for her. Something about like a small town single dad trope is gonna do it for me every single time. If you liked In a Jam, this book is so similar to that. The tension between the two of them and the chemistry, and then when they finally like caves in, I just loved this book so much. And then the most recent release was Powerless, which is about like the honorary brother kind of best friend, and his childhood best friend is those brothers' cousin. She's a little bit younger than them, and she's always had a crush on Jasper since they were like 10 years old. He's always just kind of brushed it aside because I think he's like 4 years older, so he was always like, she's just a kid, it's just a childhood crush. All the boys consider Jasper like a brother, so they would always refer to her as his cousin. He was kind of like, I can't go there, like she's kind of like my cousin, even though she's not. This book takes place like 15 years later. She's engaged to someone else, and her engagement kind of triggers him realizing that he's in love with her, but she ends up like running away at the altar with him, and they go on like this whole road trip. There's some other things that like trigger this road trip as well, where they kind of just like need a getaway, whatever, and they go on this road trip, and their relationship builds over the time of this trip and like staying in these hotels. I gave this one 4 stars, and both of those ones 4.5 stars, so they're all really good, and I definitely recommend them. A little bit of a change of pace, I read Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. This book was so good too. If you read her other book, Before We Were Strangers, I loved that one. I don't know which one I loved more. Like I just was obsessed with the way this was written. It's so unique. So basically, Emmy, the main character, she's dating this guy who kind of treats her like shit. You see that right off the bat, but she lives with her best friend, and one day her best friend comes home and is like, oh my god, you need to read this book. It's like the #1 New York Times bestseller right now. It's the best book I've ever read. Please read it. And Emmy's like, okay. She starts reading it and realizes that it's her life story that someone else has written about all of her childhood trauma, and the author's name is under a pseudonym, so she's like I don't really know if that's who I think it is. And as she keeps reading, she realized this book has to have been written by like her childhood best friend slash like boyfriend slash guy she's been in love with forever, who she had a falling out with and hasn't heard from in years. So as she's reading the book, you're also getting to read it, and you're reading about her life story, and you're reading about her first love. And I thought that was such a unique thing to see their first love written through the guy's point of view and seeing her react to it while also like getting to know her through this book. They both just had such a rough upbringing. Like at some points it was literally hard to read, but you could see how much the two of them loved each other. As she's reading it, it's also switching to like, she'll put the book down and continue on with her day in the real world. And then in the real world, all these little signs are making her cross paths with this guy again. It's a second chance romance. The whole time she's seeing him in real life, he's like, have you finished the book yet? Have you finished the book yet? Have you gotten to the end? And she's like, I can't believe you would have written this. This wasn't your story to tell. Basically kind of mad at him. And he's just like, it's a work of fiction. It's not real. It's a work of fiction. Have you gotten to the end yet? And the whole time I was literally like, just get to the end. Like, why does he keep saying get to the end? And she took so long to read this book. With Before We Were Strangers and Swear on This Life, they both kind of give like that normal people vibe where it's like realistic, like two people missing each other, miscommunications, you don't know if it's gonna be a happy ending. That's what these are like. Then I read Blindside by Candy Steiner. I've never heard anyone talk about this, and I know it's part of a series, and I don't know why I just randomly picked it up. I think I was looking through my TBR for a fake dating trope because I was in the mood for one, and I saw this. It did not disappoint. I was actually so pleasantly surprised with how good it was. Basically, this is that kind of trope, like The Deal, where Gianna has a crush on this guy who she thinks is so out of her league and like whatever, she can't get his attention. Clay is the captain of the football team. They strike a deal, and he's like, I'll pretend to date you to make this guy jealous so he'll like you. Like, trust me, it will work. She's like, well, what do you gain from this? And he's like, I'm also trying to get the attention of another girl, of his ex-girlfriend who dumped him. So they strike up this deal to have this fake relationship. It's also a sports romance, like he's on the football team, like I said, and she's also like the PR interviewer for the football team, so like she knows all the friends, whatever, but she's not like very popular, and he is. The progression of their fake dating relationship I thought was really good. You could tell that they genuinely became friends throughout the relationship, but they were both supposed to be pining for these other people, and you're watching them both realize they don't really give a fuck about the other people, and they actually just want to be with the person they're fake dating. And so there's jealousy because of that. They're watching each other with other people. When they're like, okay, our ploy is actually working, they're both like, wait, do we want it to work anymore? Like, but they're not communicating this because they think the other person still wants to be with the other person, you know? But yeah, I really recommend it if you like fake dating. It's kind of that cliche trope, but also I thought it was really well done. So next, I read King of Wrath by Anna Huang. I finished the Twisted series like earlier in the year, and this character was hinted at in the last Twisted book, and I was like, I'm intrigued by this. Like, I want to read it, and I finally picked it up, and I'm so glad I did, because this book, it was giving mafia vibes, even though it's not the mafia. They're just like billionaires, and it's kind of an arranged marriage situation between these really rich families. So Dante is like super grumpy, whatever. I don't even think he believes in love. And then Vivian is arranged to marry him by her father, who's also really rich. There's some like situation that goes into that. I'm not gonna get into the whole backstory of why, but you see in Dante's point of view that he's being blackmailed to marry Vivian, and Vivian doesn't know he's being blackmailed. So he's like very adamantly not wanting to be with her, and she's kind of just like, it's my duty to my family, whatever. They start falling in love, as they do. Over time, like their relationship is just so cute. You can see him like who's so serious, businessman who doesn't care about anyone or anything, falling for her, which I thought was so cute. And like he became such a softie, but then obviously she doesn't know this relationship started off with him being blackmailed, and like he never actually wanted to be with her until he fell for her. And then obviously she's gonna find out, and then there's all the drama with that. But I just really liked this book. If you want something that's like not that serious but still good and gonna give you butterflies and have that whole grumpy sunshine vibe, I recommend it. And I can't wait for the rest of the books in this series to come out. They've hinted at some of the other people that are gonna get books, and I'm kind of excited to see. Oh god, the next book is literally gonna make me start crying just from mentioning it. I love it so much. Do you see me? I'm about to cry. I haven't even picked the book up yet. Is that enough to get you to read it? Look how big this book is though. This is the biggest book. Let's compare it to a normal size book. First of all, in height and in width. The new Boys of Tommen book came out, Redeeming 6, and I've already loved this series more than I've loved almost any book ever. If you read anything I've recommended you ever in this life, read this. Look up the trigger warnings because it's very, very, very dark, but this is the 4th book. I've already talked about the other books in my favorite books of 2022 video, so if you want to hear more about the introduction books, but there's one couple that has the first 2 books, and this is the second couple that has the second 2 books, and then there's going to be more and more couples in this whole found family friend group. It's such a character-driven story, you know that's what I love. And the books are this thick, so obviously you're getting so much story that it's impossible to not fall in love with them and like care about these characters so much. And I've never felt so many emotions while reading. In my real life, I've never felt this many emotions as I did reading this one singular book. Like, I felt so deeply for these characters. It was painful and borderline unbearable, like having to read them going through these things. I can't even explain it because I've never felt this way before. As I was reading this, I was like, I can't believe there's people that are gonna live their lives never having read this series. Like, they're never gonna experience the emotions I'm feeling right now, and they never understand what it feels like to read books this good. Literally bury me with this series, bury me with it. Have the Addicted Calloway sisters on one side and have the Boys of Tommen on the other, and lay me there, because that's how I want to go. I just love them so much. Okay, then I read the new release in the Eden series, which was Jasper Vale. I really like this series, but this book in particular wasn't my favorite. All the books follow a different sibling in the Eden's family, and they come from a small town. This book is about Eloise, one of the sisters. She's trying to prove to her parents that she's super responsible and mature so she can take ownership of the hotel that their family owns, because they don't really trust her yet because they think she's too young and whatever. So in the process of her trying to prove to them that she's this responsible businesswoman, she's at a party in Vegas and ends up marrying someone. And the guy she married was her sister's husband's best friend. She wakes up the next morning realizing they're married, they'd slept together, whatever. And she's like, oh my God, this just ruined everything, because now my parents are gonna think that I'm irresponsible and not give me the hotel. And then he's like, I really need to stay married. He wants to take her to a wedding as his wife. And they end up striking up a deal to stay married for like the next 3 months and tell everyone that they did it on purpose so that her parents don't think she's totally crazy. They just think she's like in love. They have a lot of chemistry between them. I thought Jasper was so hot, but I didn't feel like any like connection to this story or the characters, so that's why I didn't love it too much. Then I read the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. This is part of the Friend Zone series, which I loved the Friend Zone, so I don't know why I put off reading this for so long. I'm glad I did read it. I wasn't obsessed, but it was still good. Basically, Sloane, her fiance, passes away in a motorcycle accident, and you saw that happen in the Friend Zone. And then this book takes place 2 years later, and she's obviously still like heartbroken over it, but all her friends are like, you need to get out of this like depressive episode, you need to try to move on, whatever. And she's like, no, I just don't want to do that. And then one day she finds a stray dog and she calls the number on the tag, and then this guy answers. She's like, I found your dog. And he's like, what? I'm out of town, someone's supposed to be watching him, can you please just hold on to him for me until I get home? She agrees. They end up like start texting first about the dog, and then it turns into them just like talking, and then they start calling each other on the phone, and it's obviously they have a lot in common. They really get along and they banter, whatever. And then when he comes home, he's like, let me take you on a date. And on this date, she realizes that he is her favorite music artist. So that's like as if I was texting Harry Styles and then I met up with him and realized it was Harry Styles. That's what happens to her. They have like this instant connection where they're like, we need to be together, but he's going on tour for the next year, so it's like really bad timing. And then over the next like month that they're together, they start falling in love. She meets his family. She's finally getting some happiness after these like years of sadness after losing her fiance. He convinces her to come on tour with him. There's a lot of drama with the media. I feel like if you like the One of Us is Famous trope, you'll really like this. It was giving very much Wattpad story to me. Like if you just replaced his name with like Harry Styles, it would be like a fanfic, you know? Like I mean that in the highest regard because I was a Wattpad girly, so. Then I read Hookshot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the last book in the Hoops trilogy. This is probably my second favorite. Longshot is my favorite. But so basically Lotus just swears off guys at the beginning of this book. She's like, I'm not dating anyone, I'm not hooking up with anyone, I need to focus on myself. She has a lot of trauma that she hasn't worked through that she really needs to like figure out because it's starting to affect her life. And then she meets Keenan, who's like 12 years older than her, basketball player, single dad, who just had this whole like scandal in the media with his wife cheating on him, and he's going through a divorce. And so the two of them meet each other. There's instant like sparks, chemistry, whatever, but they know that they shouldn't date right now. It's not the right time for them, so they decide to just be friends, and they like hang out a lot over the span of like a few months, and you watch them hanging out as friends, and it's kind of a friends to lover situation because they can't like deny the chemistry between them anymore. Yeah, look up trigger warnings for sure. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't feel like a deep connection to it. It was still good. So okay, this was probably the only book of the month that I didn't like, Pucked by Helena Hunting. This has been on my TBR for years, like maybe 4 years now, because it's a hockey romance series, and I love a good hockey romance and I love a good series. So I've been anticipating this for a while, and I finally picked it up this month, and it was so disappointing to me. I think because I went into it thinking it was gonna be like different than what it was. It was basically just smut, which you know is not for me. It starts off with this girl hooking up with her brother's hockey teammate, and they literally just hook up one night. They have a one-night stand. They both kind of get like obsessed with each other, and they want to keep having these one-night stands, but they're doing it behind the brother's back. Basically every chapter was just them having sex for like half this book. I don't know, I didn't like it. And I also thought it was a little bit cringe. Not even a little bit, I actually thought it was cringe. Like the things they said repetitively and often, and just my toes are curling right now thinking about it. Like some of the things they said I just hated. It wasn't like god awful, like I still was able to finish it, but it's definitely not for me. Yeah, that was the only flop of the month. And then last but not least, I read The Happily Letter After by Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward. This was another single dad book. I don't know what got into me this month with every single book being a single dad trope. I swear I'm not trying to be somebody's stepmom yet. Nonetheless, this book was like very cliche and predictable, but like so easy. I read it in one sitting. Basically, Sadie works at this magazine and she like has a column where people write letters to Santa. And one day she gets this letter from a little girl basically being like, "Hi Santa, for Christmas this year, I'd really like you to find my dad a girlfriend because my mom passed away a few years ago and my dad's not happy anymore. Also, I would like a pair of socks," or something like that. Sadie reads this letter and she immediately like feels a connection to this girl because her mom also passed away when she was that same age. So she feels a connection to this girl and she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy her the socks, or whatever the gift was, I don't remember. But she's like, I'm just gonna buy her the socks and I'm gonna look at the return address or whatever and deliver them to her. And she shows up at their doorstep to like deliver a present and the door opens. He's like, "Oh my god, we've been waiting for you for so long. Are you the dog trainer?" And for some reason she's like, "Yeah." She's not the dog trainer. He lets her inside and she has to like fake train this dog. And she meets the little girl and they immediately have like such a good connection. And she starts coming over frequently to pretend to be the dog trainer. And the dad starts like liking her and being nice to her, even though he's so grumpy, until he finds out she's not the dog trainer and she's been lying. He doesn't like fire her because he's like, "Well, you've been doing a fine job and my daughter loves you, so you can stay." And then it's their relationship from there. Nothing special, nothing crazy, but I read it in one sitting. So those are all the books I read this month. There was so many of them. This is like the longest reading wrap up I've ever done. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing what I read this month. If you want to like stay on top of seeing what I read in order, you can follow my Goodreads, which is linked down below as always. I update it like every time I finish a book, so you'd be able to see that. But yeah, with all that being said, if you want to follow me on my other social medias, they're also linked down below. And I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Bye!